More Illustrator. So at the end of our last video, you were shown how to make this lion, and we basically used a couple of tools, mainly circles and ellipses, to create the face, and we did the pen tool to make the hair in the background. All I've done in addition to that since that video is add a couple of white ellipses to the eyes to make it look a little bit more cutesy. But this video is all about adding the body parts to the lion, using other tools, that is, and also using the text tool so to show you that it's not just about typing. There's a lot of things you can do with the text tool to kind of make it look a little bit nicer then. But anyway, first things first, I just want to tidy this up because I really do like that inner glow effect we had in the background there. And I want to do the same on the other body parts here because it looks a little bit odd that these have got the black outline on them and then this bit doesn't in the back. So just to remind myself as well as you guys on how to do it, if I select the nose, which is I'm using the black cursor for, which is also known as the selection tool. I could also go to layers on the right hand side, and you can see it's highlighted in blue, the one we've got selected, but I can choose things like this as well. But as you can see, I've got that highlighted there. Now to add an inner glow to this, I'm just going to go to Effect, to the first stylize. Now there is another stylize, I don't know why there's two, I think it's because it's Photoshop effects at the bottom. And I'm just going to do inner glow, and it kind of does a white inner glow on it for me. I'm going to make it normal. There are loads of different options to choose from, but normal seems to work for me. And the color, if I click on it and I go to color swatches, and I think it's somewhere down around about that area this color was, and you can see it's a slightly different color there. So I'm just going to use that one. It adds the glow onto it for us. I want it to be on the edge, and I'm just going to increase the blur up a little bit, like so, and your opacity can stay as it is. And the only other thing I really need to do then is get rid of the stroke, and I can do that just by clicking down until it goes down to 0 and it disappears. And as you can see, like this inner glow effect. So right, so I'm going to pause the video at this point because I'm going to try to do the same with the head and this mouth area, and maybe play around with the eyes a little bit, and then we'll have a look at actually doing the body parts. That's better. So there's inner glows added to this, but they're a bit hard to pick out. So I'm just going to add a shadow onto these, which again, you go through Effects, Stylize, and Drop Shadow, which is the very top one, to make them look as if, well, they stand out a little bit better from each other. So bear with me a second. There we go. So I've just added a drop shadow to the mouth area and the nose area so it stands out a little bit. Right, on to the body parts. Now I can zoom in and out using Control minus and, well, I should be able to use a Control minus and Control plus to zoom in. And if I needed to kind of move up and down to give myself some shaking space, I can do it like that. Now, like we've done previously, on the shapes, if I hold down on the shape which is there and I click on the ellipse tool, it's going to do that color there. And in fact, do I want it to do that color? No, we'll sort that out in a moment. If I hold down the shift key and drag it out, it makes a perfect circle for us. So I'm going to roughly do it around about that area. And like I said earlier, I'm not going to do the stroke on there. I'm going to leave it blank as it is. Now, I've shown you how to use the white cursor, which is also known as the direct selection tool. And what that basically means is you can kind of readjust this then. So if I wanted my lion to look, I suppose, a bit more buffer, like a bigger chest and big shoulders, if I drop down this top bit, and then maybe if I stretch down this bottom bit, so it looks a little more like a triangle. And if I really wanted to as well, I can drag in these bits so it looks a bit more kind of, I suppose, a bit more a dominant, more shaping. I don't think that's the right word. And I'm just going to move that up into position. And on the layers, I can drag that down to the bottom, or I could have simply then right-clicked on it. And if I go to arrange, there is send to back, or Control Shift and square bracket. I didn't know that's what it was to send it to the back. So, so it makes it look a little bit. Actually, I'm going to bring it a little bit higher, like so. So he looks like he's got a bit more of a stocky shape. Now, if you wanted to be make it a bit more kind of like friendly, you could potentially just flip this around. So if I go to right click and transform and reflect, I think it is, and if I reflect it horizontally, then you can make it look a little bit more safer, as in it's kind of more bulbous around the belly area. So that looks a bit more nicer to me. So we can buff up or we can fatten our lion like that. Right, now, I actually want to give our lion some dignity. I actually want to give him some like underwear because at the moment he's kind of showing us everything, isn't he? Now, a couple of tools you can use then are the scissors tool and the knife tool. And I think the scissors tool is on the eraser. Yeah, there it is. And what that allows us to do is basically decide where we want to cut our shape. So I'm going to click on this part of the shape. I'm also going to click on that part of the shape. And what should happen then if I click away from it using the selection tool, you'll notice that bit gets highlighted, this bit also gets highlighted, and you can see somewhere on here that then it's actually split into two things. But then I can potentially move that away and get rid of it if I wanted to. But in this case, I actually want to color in his pants because that's going to be his pants then. So they are this color here, and I can drag it back up. So he looks like a little bit like Mowgli from Jungle Book. And yeah, I can adjust that slightly if I wanted to. I wasn't quite accurate with it. So that's one thing you can do to make a nice simple cut across it. But I'm actually going to undo that a couple of times to go back to where we were. And I'm going to try to find the knife tool. And I think with the knife tool, I need to click on the three dots down at the bottom. And I'll need to go and find it. Now, I know that these look like the knife tool, but it's actually a sliced selection tool, which isn't the same thing. It actually does something web related with that. But there is a knife tool here somewhere. I might have to kind of scroll down to find it. There he is. There's the knife tool. And the knife tool basically does exactly what the scissors tool does, but you can actually freehand it. So if I wanted to, I can kind of cut this type of shape out of it. And what that does when I let it go, and I click away from this, you can see then that we've got that bit. Right, so you can kind of do a lot of things with shapes using the knife and scissors tool. So I'm not going to stick with that, but I'm just showing you that's something you can do with it. Right, now we've done the inner glow side of things, but I also want to show you the gradient tool. Now, I'm not a big fan of the gradient tool, but I think it's worth knowing how to actually kind of use it then. So with the gradient tool, when you select it, it'll ask you over on the right hand side what type of gradient you want. And once you choose a gradient, and I'm going to use the radial one, it actually then applies a gradient to it. And it actually gives it like a 3D look a little bit, and it does some of the work that the inner glow was doing on us before. But first things first, I want to change the colors because I don't want those colors. And if I double click on the first point here, and then I can go and find using the eyedropper the color I wanted in the first place. So it's actually right in the middle there. And this outer part, if I double click on it, and I use the eyedropper again, and I'm going to use the darker shade actually here, I think, then you can't see it very well maybe on the video, but it does actually do two different, well, it does a gradient between those 2 points. Now, one bit of advice I'd like to say is try not to use two different, completely different colors on a gradient because they end up looking awful. I know sometimes they fit into certain kind of types of graphics, but generally try to use subtle gradients because you can kind of manipulate this then as much as you want by dragging and dropping, and you can see what it does there. And like if I wanted to, I can change the angle. I think if I grab the points of this, like so, so you can make it a bit more intense, or you can make it really subtle by dragging it out further. I'm trying to drag it, but it won't let me do it. So I'm going to put it back to that point. So it looks very similar to what we did with the inner glow, but you know it's up to how you want to do this. If you want to mess around with it at all, but it's just one way of doing it. And what you'll notice is then when you click away from a shape and click back on it, over here then it'll say edit gradient, and when you click on that, all this becomes live again, and you can mess around with these and do whatever you want. Okay. Right, now, I did say body parts, and I'm actually just going to leave it at that stage here because I realise that the video is getting a bit long. But I did say I wanted to talk to you about text as well. So text is just simply the text tool. There are other options on here as well, if I can get it to work. Is there any more options? Oh, it's crashing on me, great. But on the text tool, yeah, there's type on a path, so you can basically make something go squiggling on a path if you wanted to. A vertical type tool means that it starts here and then it actually types down rather than left to right. But I just want to use the text tool, and I'm going to make it so it is black, so it's nice and easy to see, and I'm just going to type in Lion. And this is our kind of default font over here on the right hand side, Myriad Pro, and you can go through and look for them, and you can see the standard things about changing the size and so on as well. But a couple of things I do want to show you. So if I use the selection tool to make sure it's selected, I am going to increase the font size so you can see it a bit bigger. But the things I like to kind of use are these, which actually didn't do anything, so I don't know why I'm showing you that part. It might be in this one actually. Turning on extended text, can I set? Right, okay, I'm not going to use that one either because it's giving me a hard time. But this one, as you can see, as I increase it, it basically stretches out the words, so the space in between the letters. But I can actually go the other way as well, so I can actually minus it, I believe, if I keep holding down. So they actually get a bit more kind of crumped together, and I think sometimes that looks a little bit nicer, a little bit better than it was in the first place. Now, on the three dots, which are here as well, you've got loads of different things which will appear any second soon. And you can see that some of these are already on here. But in fact, what I did want to show you is the three dots here. Because on the three dots here, oh, where is it? I'm looking just to make it bold. Oh, it's regular there. So if I click on regular and I make it bold, I can make it bold condensed. You can see it does different kind of styles for you. And I'm going to leave it like that. And in fact, I'm going to zoom in on our text so you can see it a little bit better. And I'll go back to these three dots. There was something else I wanted to show you on here as well. Where's it gone? Right, so I think it was the spacing. No, when there was a, you can make it shorter, you're right, then so you can make it really kind of squished down. I'm just going to keep that back to 100%. I think it was 100 in the first place. But as you can see, there's things here you can kind of mess around with to make your writing look a little bit different. But the big thing I really did want to show you, when you've got text like this, if you go up to, I think it's type, and type refers to text, and you create outlines, what that does then, it actually makes these into shapes. So if I go to layers, I'll show you what I mean. There's a group now with each of these letters individually. And in fact, I'm going to ungroup it by doing Control, Shift, and G, so they all become separate things. So just like we were manipulating the lion's body earlier, you can click on a letter, you can go to the white cursor, and you can grab these points, and you can, well, actually, I've got to double click on it to grab them, and you can manipulate them out. So you can make your own kind of writing with it. So as you can see straight away, it's gone from being a basic L, which this font style decided to give us, and we can actually start to do things differently. So again, with the O, we can do something a bit different to this. We can drag it down so the O looks a little bit different. Potentially as well, I think if I zoom in on the end of it, there is these little dots as well within there, which allows us to curve the letters. So we can actually have it so it's more curved like that. And one of the nice things as well with this, if I just zoom back out, you can actually then move these things using the black cursor. So they're a little bit higher, a little bit lower. So it's a little bit more kind of fun then. And if I zoom back out to where we were, then you can see that without even really realizing it, we've kind of done our own little font style by using the white cursor and by using the black cursor to move them around. So that's something for you to have a play with as well. And one last thing I forgot to mention, there's something called the Pathfinder, which is quite a useful tool, and you might have seen it appear like down here as you're doing like shapes like this. So I've just put an ellipse down, I'm going to put another ellipse down, like so. And the idea is when they're both highlighted, so I use the black cursor to select them both, or I could hold on shift and do it then, these Pathfinder options come now. So what this means is the unite means where you can actually put it so it becomes one shape, which might be useful to you. And I'm just going to undo that a second. There's also another one there, which is called minus. And what that does then, the one which is on the top, it basically punches it through that shape underneath. So if I press that one, it basically knocks out like that. So sometimes it's a lot easier to make a shape like this than there is to try to mess around with the pen tool. And one thing I'm going to try to do, I'm just going to group those together. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's just see what happens, right? If I put that on there and I hold down shift so they're both selected, so both the letters and the lion's body is there, and I'm going to press minus. Oh my god, it worked! So it actually punches a hole through our, and then we can actually move it around and you can see the lion in the background type of thing. That's kind of cool.